Let's talk pressure and support. And I think this topic comes from, many of our topics come from the conversations we have with math coordinators, math coaches, district leaders who are part of our district improvement program, but also coaches and consultants and coordinators who reach out to us to ask us our opinions on different topics in the math improvement plans they're creating. We've been talking a lot about pressure and support lately with these teams, and thinking about what is the necessary pressure and who is responsible for some of the pressure when we're trying to coordinate math improvement plans from the district level down to the classroom level. And then how does that support look, and what is the right balance that we want to create between the pressure that we kind of nudge people on, but also the support that our educators are needing and getting. And it's kind of like, let's figure out and let's talk about, say, the balance that we need to create between pressure and support. So we've got, give us some kind of guidelines here. Like, let's first talk about, like, when we say pressure, what does that mean? When we say support, what does that mean?
Okay, that's a great question, because the way that I was thinking about it is, what does it look like when there's too much pressure and not enough support? So let's kind of paint a picture of what that looks like. It's like there's, new mandates coming in. We have testing coming up for students. We're doing teacher performance appraisals or some type of evaluation, and we're throwing all of these expectations on the backs of educators. And I actually heard, a leader or a coach recently use the language like, we're using data and it's being weaponized. So there's, a lot of expectation, a lot of monitoring, a lot of measurement happening and feedback to educators, but without the support in place to help empower them, help them feel validated. And so what that leads to is burnout, frustration. It also impacts retention of educators in the field, which we know is a problem in many of our districts in North America. You have likely a very toxic work environment where educators are feeling overwhelmed and demoralized. So that's a scenario where there's a lot of pressure. The expectations are high, the monitoring of teacher performance is high, the monitoring of student achievement is high, but there aren't the right systems or structures in place for educators to feel supported in the work.
Would you say that feels more the norm these days than the other side, which is too much support and not enough pressure?
This is going to be a bold statement, and I hate to make generalizations, because I think that there's, it would be unfair.
But it sounds like you're going to make one anyway.
I wonder if there's not enough pressure and not enough support.
Got it.
Tell me more.
Okay,
so let's talk about the opposite scenario, which is actually what we hear about often, because when we're meeting with coaches, coaches are in the role to support.
Yes.
So they're leading with support, and they're trying to create spaces where they are responsive to educator learning needs, and we always say, there's always value to working one-on-one with teachers.
Right.
But what happens when there's support but no pressure?
Yeah.
You have a lack of urgency, you have complacency, you have a lack of collective efficacy where you're working together towards a common goal. There's a lack of accountability. And oftentimes what we hear from the coaches that are in this situation where the support is there, but the pressure is not, is that they kind of feel aimless. They feel a little bit lost. They're not sure what their impact is. And they're almost seeking more clarity, more clear communication, more alignment, more support, or let's say pressure from leadership.
Yeah.
And I guess, so when you said, what do we think most often? I don't know. I wonder sometimes if in a lot of our districts right now, because of the push towards strengthening literacy, math might be on the back burner as far as pressure and support in some spaces. And again, I'd hate to make that generalization, because I think every district is in a different place.
Yeah. See, when I think about the two, you gave some examples about like what pressure is, and it sounded a lot like kind of like oversight and monitoring and check-ins, and make sure you, like, I had this image of like one of the districts, when we met with them a couple of years ago, they were like, teachers were responsible every lesson to turn in their lesson to their, assistants, a principal, for them to evaluate, like there's like this kind of monitoring and oversight in as a pressure examples. And so when I think about like the pressure and support, it's like, I don't think it's about how much, because I think it's about like the types and the quality, or the, instead of like the quantity of the pressure. And same with the support, is like, you can have a lot of support. It could just be bad support, or like not quality support for teachers in the right way. So when we think about pressure, if I go back to think about like how much is the right pressure, or the types of pressure we want to think about, is there, because what you were saying too is that there's this lack of, like, when we don't have the right support or pressure, then, or in the as much pressure, you were saying like there's like not enough focus, and it's like, well, I don't know what to do. And really that's like the type of pressure to me, because it's like there's no goal, there's no vision, there's probably not been communicated clearly to the people who are, say, supporting or doing the work, or are responsible to do the work. So there's like the pressure of like, we feel, but there's also like a guidance in terms of pressure as well, of like, where are we structuring the work that we want to do. One example you just reminded me of before we hit record is one of the districts that we helped kind of start, they're in the early stages of the coordination component, or stage 2 of our program, and thinking about optimizing their structures. That example of that district, who in one respect, they were looking at professional development in terms of data monitoring, and in teachers were bringing, say, samples of assessments in, and they were coordinating, and they were looking at how do I unpack this to use in the classroom for feedback. But then they also had coaches who were supporting teachers, but the coaches weren't using the data to help coordinate the support that was happening in the classroom. And therefore was a mismatch of what's happening here. And when you think about the pressure level, it's like, well, okay, we're looking at, making sure that both, say, arms that are responsible for the support need to know where the pressure is put, which means like, where's the measurement? Like, are we focused on the right things? Are we not coordinated here? And when we have that, say, misalignment, then it's clear that there's not the right pressure, and not necessarily too much pressure or not enough pressure. I like to think about it as like, we need the right types of pressure in order for the support to actually work.
So we've kind of talked about the extremes, when there's too much pressure, when there's too much support with no pressure, or maybe neither are happening because the priorities have shifted elsewhere. So let's kind of describe why it's important to have both, and what some of the ideals, let's say, might look like in a district. So we need both, because, as you alluded to, the pressure is what allows us to remain focused. It creates clear alignment. There's transparency at different levels and for different stakeholders to know what is the work that is important right now across the district. And then we have these monitoring tools or accountability structures to help us measure our progress towards that goal. Mm-hmm. And those monitoring tools can be used to empower, to celebrate. They don't have to be just like assessment in the classroom. The purpose isn't necessarily to be punitive. It's to celebrate our growth and to ensure that we are putting the right support in the right places. So we definitely need that pressure. And we're going to talk a little bit about, some specific examples, but also how do we assign the roles and responsibilities around pressure? Like, whose job is it to ensure that the appropriate pressure is in place?
And I think this is what we're seeing with the districts that we're speaking with and supporting is that we might set goals. So let's say we realize that a vision for mathematics instruction is important, and it is extremely important to have a clarified vision for effective mathematics instruction at all levels. So at the district level, at the administrator level, at the teacher level in the classroom, like, we need to have that coordinated effort. And then let's say you created your plan. Let's say you have an improvement plan, and you've accounted for different support systems. You've accounted for different goals. You've got some key results that you're going to monitor. But then it's like, this is where we're seeing, I think, a lot of this balance is out of whack, because when you have the goals, if you have not yet assigned a role or a person to be accountable for a particular key result, and we're talking, say, at the coordinator level or the administrator level or the superintendent level, then these initiatives or these goals get lost. And we're seeing that all over the place when, say, a team creates a set of goals, but then starts to roll them out. And then one person's thinking, well, I thought the administrators were putting pressure on the teachers to account for this goal. And then we're going to, say, own the school level goal and have that. And therefore, the superintendent was responsible maybe to convey that information down to the principals. And whereas the principals and maybe someone else thought that the coaches at the school level or at the district office level were responsible for communicating this or for rolling this out or supporting this. This is what we're seeing a lot of, is this mismatch of saying, well, I'm not an administrator, I'm a coach, but I can't, say, tell the administrators exactly how to run their programs. I could, but I don't have the right pressure to do, I'm not the pressure point to get that done. We need some other pressure point. So in a way, if we are creating a set of key results, you're creating goals, you're creating improvement plans that are effective, you do need to make sure that you're assigning, the right pressure to the right person so that the work can roll out, and everyone has to be aligned on and know who that person is or who that type of person is or that role is, so that we can lean on them when the pressure is needed. Because a lot of times it's like we're that coach trying to put pressure on something to get done, but you can't, because it's just feels wrong in terms of your role.
So you made a really good point, and I'm going to make another bold statement.
You're just being bold today.
Yeah. I really don't think it should ever be solely the responsibility of the math team or the coaches to be putting pressure on teachers, because they're also trying to build relationships and build trust. And if the relationship feels in any way evaluative, it's going to impact the environment that they can actually engage as a think partner. So that's why, to your point, it's like we need to, in our plan, clearly delineate what pressure is going to look like. And again, pressure that is productive and empowers, not punitive and evaluates. And then we need to get really specific, who and when. So we should have the role defined as well as a timeline. Because without the timeline, again, there's no urgency to do this work, and there can be a lot of stagnation and complacency. So let's actually paint a picture.
Sure.
So imagine that one of your action steps, so you're looking to, let's say, improve student fluency, and you're supporting the implementation of problem strings as a fluency routine that's going to result in increased student fluency. Okay, so now you need support. You need to have professional development for teachers to understand what a problem string is and how to use it and when to use it. You need to, again, and that's not just a one-time professional development session, that means ongoing support. You need to create communities of learners, so a professional learning time where teachers can collaborate. So maybe it's like, I get to go into your classroom tomorrow to watch you do a problem string, give you feedback, you're going to come into mine the next day. How are we creating communities of collaboration? Are there opportunities for coaching support? Are we highlighting spaces where great things are happening and building the capacity of that informal leader to maybe share with their peers? Are we ensuring that teachers have access to the right resources? So do we have the problem strings resource in their hand so that it's at their fingertips when they go to deliver this lesson within their larger lesson structure? So imagine all of those supports are in place. Now we need the pressure.
Right.
So the pressure might look like the administrator says, I'm coming in at the end of the month to observe a problem string in your classroom. This is the checklist that I'm going to be using because we all have a common understanding of the characteristics of an effective problem string. This is not evaluative, but this is for the purpose of growth. It's for me to understand what this looks like when it's being done effectively. It's to provide you with feedback and identify any opportunities for growth for you. Can you please select a date that works for you, that you would be comfortable having me come in? And do you need any support in advance of that visit? And maybe, the first time through, that the administrator also needs support. So
Mm-hmm.
they're partnering with a knowledgeable other who's going to be coming in. They're going into some, the facilitator or the coordinator has identified some bright spots so that they can go in and practice with their checklist, observing a really effective problem string in advance. But regardless, it's like this is all coordinated.
It has to be
We have
coordinated.
timelines, we have roles, we have a common goal, we've removed barriers for implementation, we've put the right support in place, and now we're all on board and we're working collectively toward this change that we want to see in practice.
Exactly. Like the administrator knows what is the priority here on this particular routine. We know that that is an outcome that we're trying to change. They have it written down. They have it in part of their school improvement plan that change is going to be captured, and we know exactly how what measurement technique or tool we're going to use to capture that. If it is the walkthrough, and we're using, say, that rubric or checklist that we've developed with the teacher or with the coach or with both, hopefully, that says this is what it looks like when we're doing and performing, say, this particular routine well. This is where we are now, and we're trying to use it as a growth tool. And we're going to use that to actually measure our change this year, and that's going to define our success. When the administrator knows that, when the coach is also coordinated in this effort, and then the teacher is involved in this process, this is where the right pressure with the right support makes a dent. And and those of you listening right now are thinking about your own programs and trying to think about where the mismatch is or where the holes are in their own programming, and going like, is my coach coordinated with the administrators so that the pressure is applied in the right spots? Do we even have a goal picked out for the work that we're doing, or are we having the right support but no pressure? Because if it's like I'm just going in and I'm just going to ask the teacher to like, where do you want to work this year, and like what are we going to improve on, then that's great, but then you're missing the pressure point that actually helps the growth, that helps the growth move the way it needs to move, so that we can strengthen this up for the students sitting in front of us. Because you're right, like without that pressure, timelines lag. And this is why we have long timelines in education. We say, oh, it takes forever. It's going to take a long time. It's just, it could be a little bit more streamlined if we have the right pressure in place, which really comes down to saying, are we aligned in the work that we want to achieve? And have we defined the work that we want to work on and strengthen this year? If we could answer that, then you can forward momentum the work to make sure the alignment is there, the coordination in the key stakeholders to kind of carry this out. That's how we change math instruction in our classrooms.
So I guess, John, my question, for our community and for us on this, on this episode right now is, what if you're a coach and you recognize that this is the reality? You recognize that, yes, you can support to the best of your ability, but you're not aligned. There aren't clear goals. We don't have accountability routines in place. We don't have, common understanding at all levels by all stakeholders. What would you advise those coaches do, given, that, like you said at the beginning of this episode, maybe they don't have any authority to direct administrators and how they leverage their time? So what would be a next step for coaches who may be feeling this frustration?
I think what it, and I think this is probably what coaches are doing, right? Is to think about, okay, I know I don't have that already, and therefore I'm going in and I'm working with teachers, and I'm just going to, I'm going to work with the teachers that want to work with me, and I'm going to provide the support where they want to see support, where I can help with support, which and if you know that the because if you know that the coordination can't be there, and maybe that's the individual that you're, in the school that you're seeing, and there's no way that you can even create alignment there, is that having those goals and having those objectives yourself can help start strengthening up from the inside out, to go, these are the objectives that I know are important for math classroom, and I have a clear vision, and we've communicated that to the teacher. And then when there's opportunity to start to having discussions with, say, the next tier up or the support at the administrator level, and being making yourself open to having those vision and support talks about how important it is to have a clarified, unified, aligned vision of effective instruction. And then having those questions about like, how have you measured this in the past to hit your school improvement goals? Because every principal has to have their school improvement goals. The question becomes like, how have you measured? Because when you ask that question, they tend to say, I'm going to use student results on standardized tests to measure those things. And then you say, but does that actually measure the change you're after? And you can't say it does. So now you get an opportunity to say, let's co-develop a measurement technique or tool or system that we can implement where you, me, and the teacher are now aligned in the work that we're going to do. So in a way, it's like when you're trying to lead, when you don't have authority, part of it is really just making sure that you have your ducks in a row and you just do fabulous work. And so that all of a sudden, when those opportunities arise, you can have honest, important discussions with those who are in authority, so that now all of a sudden alignment can happen. What about you? What's your recommendation?
I was just gonna, I think that makes a lot of sense. It's like if we don't have the authority to impact at the district level, the superintendent level, to create this ideal alignment across the district, maybe we just start in an individual department or an individual school.
Yep.
And that's that's going to be a win for us this year, given our position or the relationships we've established. And as always, we also encourage people to jump on a call with us.
Right.
These are problems that we love to solve, because we are passionate, of course, about creating alignment, creating action steps that have measurements and that are realistic, so that by the end of the year you can see real change that's not only impactful but also sustainable.
For
so
sure.
Yeah, if you are listening today, you're feeling you relating to the problem that we're identifying, we absolutely encourage you to reach out.
Yes, you can head on over to makemathmoments.com /discovery. And in that link there's a book a call button. You can book a call with us. We can chat about what have you been structuring, where have you, what are the goals, and say the pebbles that are rattling around in your shoe. We want to hear your pebbles so that we can together kind of pluck them out of there. We do that every day with the leaders that we support on a regular basis. So you can be one of those as well. Yvette, any last big takeaways thinking about pressure and support here today for our listener?
I think that really the big idea is that we need both, like this balance of both. But at the core of this balance of pressure and support is a shared vision and clear objectives. And so that's kind of where we need to start.
Yeah. Like you said, it happens at every level, right? So it can happen at the district level, but if it can't, it can happen at the, say, at the coordinator level. And if it can't, it can happen at the school level. And if it can't, it can happen at the department level. And if it can happen in the classroom level, right? It's just about being clear on your on a vision for effective instruction, and making sure that you are coordinating the support efforts around that vision, that you can make sure that you've set some goals around your improvement. So if you're a coach or a teacher listening, you can do that too, and set some goals and set some things that you're going to say, these are the successes I'm going to define this year, and here's how I know I'll hit them, and then work to get the support you need to get those goals. So if you're at the classroom level, it can even work. So all levels, wherever you are, you want to be asking yourself those questions, which, when we think about the 6 components of our effective PD planning and effective classrooms, we've talked a lot about structure here today, which is thinking about, the leadership, which is the trunk of our class, our leadership tree or our district level tree that we think about when we grow a math program. The trunk is our vision and our leadership and our goals and our kind of pressure component that we talked about here. And then we also talked about the limbs of our tree, which is the professional development structures that we have access to. So coaches, and are they coordinated, and what support are we providing, and how do we optimize that support? Those are 2 of the 6. And in our podcast, weekly, every, twice a week, we're trying to give you nuggets, ideas, information on how to strengthen all 6 of those components up. So each week, today we talked about the trunk, and today we talked about the limbs. You never know. Next episode, we might be talking about the resources, which is the leaves of our tree, or maybe say the soil, the water, the sunlight, which is our mindset, in the mindset of our students, the mindset of our teachers about our students. There's 6 components, and each of them matters. And if you want to know more about those 6 components, head on over to makemathmoments.com/grow. makemathmoments.com/grow. Until next time, Math Mo Makers, we'll catch you soon. Take care.